The day Li Wei decided to reclaim his dignity and no longer be the rich family son-in-law, his mother-in-law smiled at him and said, Jing, if you want to divorce Ling, you must return the billion assets and leave with nothing. She calmly spun a glass bead in her hand, certain that he would never dare agree. However, the next moment he responded, Of course I can do that. I'll sign the agreement right away. She panicked, the glass beads spilling all over the floor. She asked, Are you sure you can accept leaving the child's custody and never seeing her or her son again? He replied again, Of course I can accept that. What's there to not accept? His tone was firm and indifferent. He said, Madam, isn't the child about to have a new father to take over and raise him? Besides, the contract is over. I've earned enough and I don't intend to keep what doesn't belong to me. All I want now is to stand and make money. Madam Ling fell silent for a long time, finally letting out a deep sigh and saying, Since you insist on leaving, I'll arrange for you to go study music in Vienna as per our agreement. The paperwork will take a week. As for the divorce, you can bring it up with Ling yourself. Thank you, madam. After leaving the old house, he quietly took out a photo. In the photo, Ling wore a bright smile, her face radiating happiness. Their son, Xiao Hao, was holding a toy, joyfully dancing around. The irony, the man in the photo was not him, but Minoru, Ling's childhood sweetheart. Chapter Minoru and Ling both came from noble families. They had been childhood sweethearts, even becoming each other's first love. However, when Minoru he went abroad and arranged a marriage with another woman. When Ling found out, she nearly went mad, crying all day and losing herself in sorrow. To help her regain her strength, Madam Ling found him, a man in need of money, and bought years of his life for million, helping Ling get back on track. From that day on, a crazy pursuer appeared beside Ling. He was a graduate of the art department at Peking University. Whenever Ling was feeling down, he would play songs for her anytime, anywhere. When she had minor illnesses, he would stay up day and night, taking care of her with utmost attention. Over time, she became accustomed to having him around, but never agreed to anything more. It wasn't until one drinking session, when rich young men used a cross-national project as a bet to see who could drink the most, that he drank himself to the point of gastric bleeding and ended up in the hospital unconscious. That was the first time Ling cried for him. She said, Jing, I agree to marry you. I believe we'll have a future. Later, he found out that it was the very day Minoru got married, and there were rumors circulating that he was kissing his new wife. Upon learning the truth, he wasn't discouraged. Instead, he continued to fulfill the contract, entering the Ling family as a son-in-law. They were married for 8 years. He worked diligently, and they even had a child, Xiao Hao Ling, who carried the Ling family name. He originally thought life would always be peaceful, but recently the Sato family had encountered a crisis, and Minoru returned to the country after divorcing. That day, Ling immediately went to the airport to pick him up. To welcome him back, the two gradually rekindled their feelings, and their contact became more frequent. To push him out faster, Minoru intentionally grew closer to Xiao Hao, speaking badly of him. After that, his cold and taciturn son started calling Minoru dad in an intimate manner. His wife, who never entered the kitchen, began personally making hot snacks for Minoru. He understood in his heart that he had lost his place in this family, but it didn't matter anymore. 1 week later, he could escape this place that had trapped him for years and pursue his grand musical ambitions. He drafted the divorce agreement, quietly waiting for the mother and son to return. Half an hour later, the villa door opened. He heard the sound and, as usual, neatly placed his slippers and organized their clothes. He had prepared the meal ahead of time, even managing to time it just right so that they could enjoy the hottest food. He said, It's autumn now. I've stewed some chicken soup from our own farm. You and Xiao Hao should eat it while it's hot. Ling replied, I just caught up with Minoru. We already ate. Ling responded casually, her eyes never leaving her phone, as if she were busy sending messages. Xiao Hao, on the other hand, frowned, looking impatient. He said, Why is it soup again? I told you I wanted fried chicken. He frowned and said, Xiao Hao, eating too much fried chicken is bad for your health. He pouted and said, I don't care. Uncle Sato took me to eat fried chicken. You're just cheap. Xiao Hao threw the chopsticks he handed him and said, No wonder they say you're useless. No money, no ability, Can't even make fried chicken. You're worse than Uncle Sato's little finger, garbage. Hearing these immature and venomous words, his heart felt like it was pierced by a steel needle, a cold chill spreading through him. He didn't know what kind of ideas Minoru had instilled in Xiaohao to make him so ungrateful. He slowly looked at Ling, but her response was even more chilling. She said, Xiaohao's still young, don't take it to heart. Ling only glanced at him and casually said, Xiaohao, don't talk to your dad like that. He rolled his eyes and said, No, I'm saying it. I'm saying it. I'm saying it. Xiaohao made a face and ran upstairs, shouting, You can't even talk back. You really are a useless loser. And just like that, everything returned to normal. The huge living room fell into dead silence again. The crystal chandelier swayed dangerously. He sat on the couch for a while, then slowly pulled out the divorce agreement from under the coffee table. At this moment, Ling was still staring at her phone, her furrowed brow relaxing into a content and comfortable expression. Without saying a word, it was clear she was chatting with Minoru. The genuine joy on her face was something she had never shown in the 7 years of their marriage. He gave a self-deprecating smile and placed the agreement on the coffee table. It didn't matter anymore. Once the agreement was signed, Ling and he would have no ties, and he would be completely free. He said, Ling, let's divorce. I'll leave with nothing. He spoke calmly, as if it were just idle chat. She nodded and said, mm. Ling just gave a perfunctory answer, not even looking up from the screen. He didn't know if she even heard what he said. He said, Xiaohao will stay with you. We'll never see each other again. If there's no problem, just sign it. She said, Okay. Listening to her indifferent response, he had already grown used to it after all these years. Now that Minoru was in the picture, she didn't even bother with the formalities. He handed her the pen and paper, and Ling didn't hesitate to sign her name, but she paused before the final stroke. He looked over and found that she was staring at the screen, grinning foolishly. He looked at her and asked, Ling, did you hear what I just said? She absent-mindedly replied, About what? Ling snapped back to reality, then impatiently finished signing her name without even looking at the document. She said, Isn't it about the charity event for the group? You can sign these things on your own from now on. Why keep asking me? After that, she stood up, went back to her room, and shut the door tightly. Watching Ling's retreating back, he couldn't help but twitch his lips. As expected, she didn't hear or care about what he said. He had invested years of his life, but in the end, all he received was his wife's indifference and his son's contempt. At least everything would be over soon. In just 7 days, he could finally fly far away. His wife, his son, and this so-called family, he didn't want any of it. The next morning, it was cold with the onset of autumn. He woke up early, only to find Ling was no longer beside him. He quickly made some breakfast and then headed to the third hospital. When he reached the hospital bed, the elderly woman immediately sat up, her wrinkles softening into a smile. She asked, Jing, what brings you here? He smiled and said, Grandma, I came to say goodbye. He handed her the $1 million he had just received as the final payment, saying, I'm leaving soon to study music abroad. This $1 million is my last donation to the orphanage. She choked up and said, Child, why are you giving money again? The director of the orphanage was moved to tears. She found him and raised him at the orphanage. Later, through his own efforts, he was accepted into Peking University's art department and was about to go abroad to study music, but due to a serious illness, the director urgently needed for life-saving treatment. In gratitude for all she had done for him, he had exchanged years of his life for the surgery funds. The rest of the money was used to help rebuild the orphanage. She didn't know how to thank him anymore. He said, Grandma, please don't worry. When I return after my studies, money will no longer be a problem. She said, That's true. It's a good thing you're going abroad to further your studies. I'm happy for you. Suddenly, the director seemed to remember something and said, But if you go abroad, won't it be hard to see your wife and child? He rubbed his shoulder and said, It's better this way. Less trouble, less to worry about. After a moment, seeing her suspicious look, he chuckled and said, I've already divorced. The director froze for a moment, then hugged his head tightly and murmured, Good. It's good that you've divorced. You've suffered these years. Remember to treat yourself better from now on. He replied, I will, Grandma, I promise. After leaving the hospital, he headed home to pack his things. He had completed his final task and was ready to leave the Ling family without any lingering attachments. In just a few hours, he had packed up everything, including all things related to Ling and her son. The hand-carved wooden sculptures Ling had made, sketches she had drawn, and the baby items he'd kept after taking care of the child for years. He had devoted himself to this family, even though it wasn't because of the contract. He had hoped to create a warm home of his own, but in the end, it was all just a dream. He gave everything one last look and then threw it all into the trash outside. At that moment, a Rolls-Royce stopped in front of the house. Xiaohao jumped out of the car first. Seeing him standing next to the trash can, he looked at him with disgust and said, "What are you doing picking through the garbage? Aren't you embarrassed? Is dinner ready? I want fried chicken." Looking at the son he had raised for 6 years, his heart twisted into a knot, and he felt both cold and angry. He frowned and said, "If you want fried chicken, go ask your Uncle Sato." You. Xiaohao's face was full of shock. This was the first time he'd ever been treated like this. At that moment, Ling walked over with Minoru. She said, "Jing, Minoru's house is undergoing some changes and he needs to stay with us for a few days. You don't mind, do you?" This was Minoru's first appearance. His handsome features hadn't aged at all after years of marriage. No wonder Ling had always been obsessed with him. In contrast, he too had once been young. Now he looked worn out from exhaustion. Xiaohao seized the opportunity and shouted, "Hurry up and help Uncle Sato move his luggage. You bad dad, do you hear me? Otherwise I won't like you anymore." He looked at them both and said, "Sorry, I just twisted my shoulder. I can't help move anything." Upon hearing this, a cold glint flashed in Minoru's eyes, but he immediately pretended to be uncomfortable and said, "Well, maybe we'll just forget about it. It seems Mr. Wang isn't too happy about it, so I'm sorry." He turned to leave, but Ling grabbed his arm, sneering, "If it's a problem, I'll help you with the luggage. He won't mind, trust me." He quietly watched the scene and chuckled. "Sure, go ahead and stay in our room. I won't have any objections." But what did it matter? Judging by Ling's attitude, this house would soon belong to Minoru anyway. After hearing this, Ling hurried to help Minoru with his backpack, as if afraid that if she delayed for even a second he might leave again. Xiaohao, understanding the situation, also ran over to help carry the bag. Just like that, the three of them supported each other, chatting and laughing, as if they were a family returning from a holiday. Xiaohao, somewhat disgruntled, said, "What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and cook dinner. I want fried chicken, and Mom and Uncle Sato want seafood to nourish their bodies." He had long become nothing more than a servant in this household. For years, he had driven them around like a chauffeur, cleaned the house like a maid, and cooked meals like a professional chef. Not only did he have to cater to Ling's picky tastes, but he also had to prepare the most nutritious meals for Xiaohao. The mother and son had always been served hand and foot. However, this time, his response was somewhat unexpected. He said, "I can't make it." Ling looked at him in surprise. In her memory, this was the first time he had ever refused to do something. Before she could respond, Minoru, putting on a pretentious, apologetic expression, sighed and said, "Sorry, I shouldn't have stayed here after all. I'm just an outsider. It's not right to ask Mr. Wang to cook." He turned around, grabbed his luggage, and put it back in the trunk, closing the door. Ling, however, said, "It's not your fault." Her face darkened and she looked at him with a frown, saying, "You said you didn't mind, so what is all this now?" He answered indifferently, "There's no food left in the fridge. I can't cook." Because he was about to leave, he hadn't gone shopping for food today. Besides, he had never planned to cook, so this was a good excuse. After enduring for years, he wasn't going to back down anymore. Upon hearing this, Xiaohao immediately began throwing a tantrum. He yelled, "I knew it. You're the worst dad ever. Now you can't even prepare a meal. Are you trying to starve us? Worst dad. I want Uncle Sato to be my dad instead." Seeing this, a flash of smugness crossed Minoru's eyes, and he quickly put on a hypocritical expression. He said, "Xiaohao, how can you talk to your father like that? It's very rude." "Sorry, Uncle Sato. I'll be more careful next time." Minoru said, "Never mind. Since there's no food at home, why don't we just go to the Western restaurant we passed by and eat there? I'll order you some fried chicken separately." Xiaohao cheered, "Yay? Uncle Sato is the best. Xiao Hao clung to Minoru's leg and acted like a spoiled child, while Ling happily watched from the side. The scene looked so warm and loving. The three of them, without hesitation, got into the back seat, and Ling asked Minoru to drive so that he could rest on the way. Minoru chatted and played games with Ling and Xiao Hao, laughing and joking nonstop, clearly treating him as if he were invisible. Minoru laughed and said, "Mr. Wang, I'm just catching up with Ling, don't mind me." He deliberately added, "After all, you don't know about our past, so it's not appropriate for us to talk about it in front of you." He responded with a single mem and stared expressionlessly ahead. He didn't need to know, nor did he want to. After all, none of this mattered to him anymore. Half an hour later, they arrived at the restaurant. Ling took the menu and gave instructions to the waiter. "Minoru likes filet mignon. Make it medium rare, no black pepper." 10 years had passed, but she still remembered Minoru's preferences. Yet when it came to him, this was the first time she had ever asked what he liked. "Jing, which steak do you want?" How interesting. If he hadn't seen the way she acted so clingy and dependent on Minoru today, he would never have known that she could be so gentle and considerate. After all, he was the one who had always remembered what she liked, while she had always been picky with him, nitpicking at every little detail. He said, "I don't eat steak." His answer surprised Ling. In years of marriage, he had always known her habits inside out. Yet this was the first time she was learning about his. He said, "You all eat slowly. I'm leaving." They had already been seated, but he didn't want to stay and disgust himself any longer. The three of them made no attempt to stop him, silently watching him leave the restaurant. He walked a few minutes before realizing that he still had the car keys in his pocket, so he turned back to the restaurant. But before he could enter, he overheard some voices from inside. Someone said, "Isn't that Miss Ling? You three really look happy together." The person continued, "Is this handsome guy your husband? He's even better looking in person. No wonder you never show off your love in public. I bet you're afraid others will try to steal him." Although Minoru had been living abroad for years and was almost forgotten by the high society circles, his poised manner and speech quickly caught the attention of the gossiping crowd, and everyone felt a bit more favorable toward him. One person remarked, "Mr. Ling and Mr. Sato really make a perfect couple. How long have you been married? Your child has grown so much." Ling's face turned slightly red, but she didn't deny it. Meanwhile, Xiao Hao was eagerly adding fuel to the fire, continuously calling Minoru Dad. Watching the scene before him, he felt a brief moment of discomfort, but he quickly regained his composure. What was there to be angry about? He was just Madame Ling's tool for pleasing Ling. Once the contract was over, the business was concluded, and nothing was his concern anymore. Inside the restaurant, at this moment, Minoru happened to spot him through the window and, deliberately spearing a piece of steak, gently held it up to Ling's mouth. He said, "Ling, thank you for helping me find a place to stay. It must have been exhausting." Ling smiled lightly and shook her head. "It wasn't difficult. Your matters are my matters." She smiled again, then opened her mouth. Minoru leaned in closer, almost face to face with her, his movements intimate and suggestive. At that moment, the crowd around them began to tease, "So sweet. Am I watching a drama? Give her a kiss." "Kiss her," Xiao Hao mischievously added. "Mom, hurry up and kiss him. I can't wait." Ling pursed her lips. "Behave, we're in public. Be mindful of the impact." Her face flushed, and she softly scolded them. But this only excited Minoru further, who proceeded to kiss her by slipping his hand into her hair. Ling hesitated at first, but as he drew closer, she eventually gave in, slowly closing her eyes to enjoy the moment. Seeing this shy act from outside the window, he couldn't help but scoff. So this so-called Ling family princess wasn't always aloof and indifferent. She just lacked interest in others. He didn't feel like enduring any more of this sickening scene. He handed the car keys to the waiter and left the restaurant without a second glance. "A mess. Ling, a gentleman just came and returned your car keys." As the waiter approached, the two were still huddled together, their faces filled with sweetness and happiness. But when Ling heard this, she suddenly turned toward the door and asked, "What? Did Jing come back just now?" Minoru noticed how much this seemed to matter to her, and a flicker of displeasure crossed his face. He pretended to be surprised and said, "Oh no, I was just joking. Do you think Mr. Wang will be upset when he sees this?" Xiao Hao pouting said, Uncle Sato, don't worry about him. He's just our servant. Besides, you and Mom have dated before, so what's wrong with a kiss? Xiao Hao, stop saying things like that. Although he was just a small child, he always managed to say things that were both vicious and mature. Ling's face shifted slightly, halting her son's words, then quickly packed her things and rushed out. On the cold sidewalk, Ling jogged to catch up with him, calling out as he was about to take a cab. As they locked eyes for a moment, she held her breath, ready for a confrontation. But after a long silence, he remained as calm as a still pond. Ling finally spoke. Don't misunderstand what you saw. It was just a joke with Minoru. There's no other meaning. Seeing that he didn't react, Ling's frustration grew and she said, Are you mad at me? There's nothing I could do with so many people teasing us. He replied, I'm not angry with you. He calmly said, Is there anything else? Ling shook her head, standing frozen as she watched him get in the car and leave. For some reason, a strange feeling stirred inside her. When did Jing become so magnanimous? Behind her, Minoru had caught up, and she dismissed her thoughts, returning to the restaurant to finish the meal. As night fell, the group returned to the villa, chatting and laughing. Once they entered, Ling kindly prepared a set of sheets and toiletries for Minoru. Though she had never done housework and didn't know where anything was, though she felt a little uneasy, she ended up asking him to help. He silently gathered the things and retreated to his study, closing the door behind him. Minoru, holding a towel, sighed and said, Looks like Mr. Wong still has some hostility toward me. Maybe I should stay at a hotel tomorrow. Ling replied, Hotels can't compare to a villa in comfort. With a slightly complicated expression, she added, Jing was acting a little strange today. Don't take it personally. Xiao Hao immediately grabbed Minoru's hand, saying, Uncle Sato, my dad has taken over the study tonight. You should sleep in the master bedroom with us. Minoru hesitated. Isn't that a bit much? Xiao Hao said, Oh, come on. You're the guest. We can't let you sleep on the couch, all right? Minoru reluctantly agreed. Not half an hour later, his phone buzzed with several pictures. They were from Minoru. He sent, Mr. Wong, could I borrow your razor? The photos included the razor and images of Minoru playing games with Ling and Xiao Hao. He replied, It's something I've used, but if you don't mind, go ahead. He casually responded, turned his phone to silent, and fell asleep peacefully. Time flew by, and 2 days later, only 4 days remained before the cooling-off period for the divorce ended. He had already purchased the instruments he needed for his continuing education and was practicing in his room. But downstairs the noise from Minoru and Xiao Hao was increasingly annoying. He went downstairs and found that they were playing around with the fish tank. Uncle Sato, I want to play cat catches fish. Can you bring the fish tank down for me? He stopped them. Wait. He blocked their path and said, You can't play with the fish. Choose something else. Xiao Hao had often played with this fish tank before, and each time he'd torment the fish to near death, leaving him to clean up the mess. He had scolded him many times, but all he got in return were curses and hostility. This time he stopped him because he didn't want to see the fish he had spent money on and cared for being ruined again. He shouted, You just don't want me to play. Xiao Hao growled in anger, and Minoru took the opportunity to speak up. Jing, what's a few fish worth? You don't need to kill the kid's enthusiasm. He smiled. Whether they're worth something or not, we shouldn't destroy things that others value. There should be basic principles in life. He retorted, Principles are worth nothing. Minoru sneered and poked his shoulder. You talk about principles, but did you manage to hold on to your woman? Keep your family together. Minoru had always been a person who kept score, and after being rebuffed that night, he was even more eager to humiliate him. He replied, I only protect what's important. He calmly returned the fish tank to its place and said, What you're talking about isn't as important to me as the fish. If you want it to be precious, take it. Minoru was now furious, his breath coming fast. You're just being stubborn. I don't believe you've been married for years and feel nothing. If you're smart, you'll get out of here. Don't make me take action. This time, he didn't even bother to respond. He simply turned and walked away. Minoru's eyes flashed with malice, and he grabbed the fish tank. He quickly reached out and gripped it tightly. The two of them struggled, and the fish tank was accidentally knocked to the ground. Crash! Glass shattered everywhere, and sharp shards instantly cut their skin. At that moment, Ling happened to come down the stairs. Chapter When Ling saw the scene before her, she rushed downstairs, carefully checking Minoru's injury, her face full of worry and panic. Minoru, are you hurt? I'm fine, Minoru collapsed, clutching his thigh, feigning death. Ling, anxious, said, You're fine. I'm calling an ambulance right now. She was distressed, hurrying to bandage his wound. After everything was done, she turned to look at the broken fish tank and asked, So what happened? It was him. Xiao Hao immediately jumped out and pointed at him, saying, He insisted on fighting us for the fish tank. Uncle Sato got hurt because of me. Ling furrowed her brows and said, Jing, didn't you say you wouldn't get angry? Her eyes were cold as ice as she glared at him. How dare you bully Minoru behind my back? How despicable, despicable. He pressed his hand to his wound, his voice trembling. These fish have been carefully raised by me for 2 years. They came to take my things. Get your facts straight. He thought Ling would be able to distinguish right from wrong. After hearing the truth, she turned her words around and became even angrier. So what if you've raised them for 2 years? They're just a few fish. Are they more important than people? Apologize to Minoru right now. Xiao Hao yelled. Apologize to Uncle Sato. You're a bad person. The mother and son tried to scold him, but just then the sound of an ambulance arrived, and they quickly helped Minoru out the door. He stood there, frozen, and after a moment, he squatted down and gently scooped up the dying fish. A sharp pain shot through his heart as he realized how much he cared for them. Only then did he notice the pain in his hand. The wound was deep and gruesome, far worse than Minoru's cut, but all the bandages at home had been used up by Ling, so he had no choice but to wrap it with his clothes and, gritting his teeth, make his way to the hospital. As the doctor bandaged his wound, a few other patients passed by. One of them said, Did you hear? Ling's daughter used all the imported medicine to help Ito recover quickly. Another responded, The whole floor's nurses have been called to the VIP room, all serving Mr. Sato alone. A third one said, Ling's daughter is such a perfect woman. If I had a wife like that. A perfect woman, using all the medicine for a small injury. What kind of absurdity was that? He couldn't help but scoff inwardly. An affair with her son while married, treating her husband like a dog. Truly a rare gem of a person. After leaving the hospital, he received an invitation from the Vienna Music Academy. They wanted him to prove that his abilities hadn't regressed by composing a song as a test. So he found a recording studio far from the city center to record a new song. A suburban field stretched out in front of him, connecting with the mountains in the distance, offering a peaceful and refreshing view. For the first time in years, he could finally breathe. For 2 whole days, he immersed himself in this peaceful land, cutting himself off from the outside world, and slowly rediscovered my long-buried musical talent. With just 1 day left before his departure abroad, he finally sent his work via email, but when he opened his phone, plus missed calls and messages flooded in, almost all from Ling and Xiao Hao. He was puzzled. Wasn't Ling supposed to be taking care of Minoru? Why was she contacting him? Confused, he took a taxi back to the villa. As soon as he entered the door, the butler and gardener came over, their faces grim. Wang sir, you're finally back. The house has been a mess these 2 days. Ling and the young master have been asking about you constantly. It dawned on him that the mother and son were simply not used to having no one to wait on them. Xiao Hao was in school, but Ling had been cooped up at home, almost going mad. Ling asked, Where did you go the other day? She leaned against the door, her voice much softer than usual, but still cold as ever. He replied, The recording studio. She asked, What made you suddenly want to go there? He answered, To clear my head. He brushed off the question. After all, she had never cared about his hobbies, whether it was fishing or gaming. To her they were just bad habits of his. She only cared about whether he satisfied her emotional needs and cared about her preferences, so he didn't feel the need to explain himself. After a brief silence, Ling spoke up about the fish tank incident. Don't take it personally. Minoru is a guest, and he's been spoiled by his family since childhood. I'm just standing up for him. Minoru has already moved out. You promised not to be angry, so don't make a fuss over something so trivial. Even her apology was reluctant, as if she were blaming him. Had it not been for his brief absence, she probably wouldn't even have bothered to speak to him. He remained silent and went upstairs to grab his luggage. Wait, there's one more thing. Ling suddenly stopped him, and from the cupboard, she took out a fish tank. This is one I personally picked out from the market as compensation. Chapter he suddenly chuckled and said, no need. They're just a few fish. If they die, then they die. He was about to leave anyway, and raising more fish would be in vain. Besides, the ones he liked most had already died and nothing could replace them. She asked, really? Seeing his magnanimity, Ling felt uneasy, almost as if she didn't recognize him anymore. That night, he still slept in the study. The next morning, he got up as usual to make breakfast for her and Xiao Hao. The steaming seafood porridge was served on the table, and Ling felt like everything she had missed had returned. But what she didn't see was that he was double-checking his flight schedule. An hour later, Ling took Xiao Hao to attend the group's charity dinner without informing him, because today Minoru was also there. In the grand hall, with its golden decorations, the elite from all walks of life mingled, their glasses clinking and conversations lively. Ling, dressed in a luxurious gown, settled her son and immediately went to find Minoru. Not long after, he also entered the hall. He was there to get his visa from Madame Ling, but as he passed through the crowd, he overheard various gossip. Someone asked, why is Xiao Hao alone? Did his mom go find Minoru again? Another person remarked, Ling's daughter is really obsessed with Minoru. I heard that just the other day, to make up for past regrets, she bought him his favorite custom yacht worth hundreds of millions. Who would have thought, after all these years, Ling's daughter still can't let go of Minoru? I remember when they were childhood sweethearts, she used to follow him everywhere, baking him cakes and treats. Whenever he didn't like one, she'd remake it from scratch. Another person added, by the way, Xiao Hao, your mom loves Ito so much. Why don't you let him be your new dad? The crowd burst into laughter, and Xiao Hao tilted his head back, innocent and naive. He said, I like Ito too. I want him to be my new dad. He turned and saw him. His little face suddenly filled with disgust. He said, why is this bad dad here? You're not welcome. Upon hearing this, a group of spoiled rich kids surrounded him, their eyes brimming with mockery. One of them sneered, well, if it isn't Ling's useless husband. Last time you hurt Minoru, and now you're here to cause trouble again. Ling's daughter is just pitying you. Don't even think about climbing up the ladder. As a kept man, you should leave now. The crowd's harsh words and insults kept pouring in, all urging him to leave. He didn't want to engage, so he continued up to the second floor, but suddenly he was pushed by Xiao Hao. He didn't notice in time and stepped on a fallen wine bottle, crashing hard on the stairs. With a loud bang, his head hit the floor, blood flowing everywhere. Xiao Hao cried out, hurry up and leave. Don't ruin mom's relationship with Ito. Realizing he had been pushed by his own son, he felt as if he had fallen into an ice-cold abyss. He gritted his teeth and stood up, the sight of his bloodied head horrifying. He asked Xiao Hao, why did you push your dad? Ling, hearing the noise, rushed over, carefully helping him up. She said, Jing, I'll take you upstairs to bandage your wound. But before she could move, a waiter hurried over saying, Miss Ling, Mr. Sato is about to pass out from drunkenness. You should go check on him. Ling furrowed her brows, a hint of hesitation on her face. She said, Jing you. He replied, I can walk on my own. He gripped the handrail, struggling to move. He said, go check on Minoru. Xiao Hao has already gone over. Don't lose track of him. Hearing this, a flicker of panic flashed in Ling's eyes. She seemed to feel that his apparent magnanimity wasn't unconditional tolerance, but rather an indifferent attitude. Mom, come quickly. Ito's throwing up. Hearing her son's call, she turned and walked away, a hint of guilt in her voice as she said, wait for me a few minutes. I'll go take care of Minoru first. As soon as Ling left, he silently went upstairs. He knocked on Madame Ling's private room, and she opened the door, startled. She asked, what happened to you? Let me call an ambulance. He said, no need. My flight is delayed. She asked, delayed? Why are you in such a hurry to leave? He answered, Madame Ling sighed deeply, unable to stop him. I know you've been wronged all these years. I won't stop you. Here are the documents and the visa. If you need anything else, just let me know. I need one more thing, he calmly said. Don't tell Ling and Xiao Hao where I am. I don't want to be disturbed. Thank you, ma'am. The clear sky with light clouds framed his view as he grabbed his luggage outside the venue and looked up. From today on, everything to do with the Ling family had nothing to do with him. The storm of the past years had suddenly ceased, and he was finally about to embrace a new beginning. He glanced back one last time, saying farewell to his old self. Then without hesitation, he turned around and walked toward the airport. Meanwhile, at the banquet table in the restaurant, Minoru was whispering something to Xiao Hao, and as soon as he saw Ling approach, he collapsed onto the ground. Mom, Ito uncle is unconscious. You should take him to his room to rest. Ling exerted all her strength to help Minoru to the bed in the room, but just as she was about to leave, he suddenly opened his eyes, drunkenly wrapping his arms around her neck. Ling, how about we stay here? Minoru pulled her closer, turning and pinning her to the bed. Ling's face instantly flushed red, and she shyly asked, Aren't you drunk? Minoru laughed and said, With how irresistible you look today, why would I still be drunk? Minoru gently loosened her clothes and was just about to kiss her when she blocked him. Ling said, Not today. Jing is still injured. I need to take care of him. Minoru persuaded. After today, there might not be another chance like this. With Minoru's repeated insistence, Ling finally gave in and surrendered to him. 2 hours later, the banquet had long since ended, and Ling searched the entire restaurant but could not find any sign of Jing. She grew frustrated and hurriedly returned home. After calling around the house, only a few servants responded. Miss Ling, Mr. Wang hasn't come back since this afternoon. What? Ling's frustration slowly turned into anger. Normally, when Jing got injured, he would simply bandage it up and then go home to do laundry and cook for her and Xiao Hao, never going to the hospital. But today he neither waited for her nor came home. What was he up to? Ling said unhappily. Find him immediately and tell him to stop throwing a tantrum. After giving the order, Ling went back to her room to rest. But as soon as she entered, she realized that many things were missing. From the books, clothes, even their wedding photos. Everything related to Jing had disappeared. Normally Jing would throw out old things while doing housework, but today it seemed like he had thrown away too much. A sudden suspicion flashed in Ling's mind as her eyes scanned the room, finally landing on an open envelope on the bedside table. When she opened it, 5 large words popped up on the divorce agreement. In the next second, her face darkened and she couldn't believe what she was reading. Jing voluntarily gave up his billion-dollar share of assets, even renouncing custody of their son. The final page even had Ling's name signed on it. That's when she remembered that a week ago Jing had asked her to sign something. She had been chatting with Minoru at the time and hadn't paid attention to the content. She never imagined it would be a divorce agreement. The documents were crumpled up and thrown violently into the trash can. Ling murmured in disbelief. Divorce? What a joke. Jing had been the punching bag for years, dutifully serving her and their son without a word of complaint. But as soon as Minoru appeared, he dared to abandon them and give up the wealth and honor? No, he must be threatening her with the divorce. Ling grew more and more certain that Jing was just trying to scare her. He would be back soon. He loved her so much. He had once bled for her, even sacrificed his dignity for her. No one loved her more than Jing. Driven by this thought, Ling left her room and slumped onto the sofa, waiting for Jing to return. But after several hours, he still hadn't shown up, even by the evening. Then her phone rang and her assistant's anxious voice came through. Miss Ling, we've checked all the hospitals and pharmacies, but we can't find Mr. Wang anywhere. It's like he's disappeared off the face of the earth. This is impossible. The usually calm and composed CEO seemed to panic for the first time. She hadn't wanted to call him personally, but now she gritted her teeth and dialed his number. Sorry, the number you dialed is no longer in service. The call wouldn't go through, and all her contact information had been blocked. Ling finally realized the gravity of the situation. She desperately thought about going to find him herself, but ended up pacing back and forth, unable to figure out where to start. Her memories started flooding back, and she realized she knew nothing about Jing, his interests, background, his circle of contacts. She didn't even know the places he frequently visited. Where should she begin looking? At that moment, Xiao Hao came home from playing soccer. As soon as he entered, he began shouting, Bad Dad. Hurry up and make me dinner. I'm starving. Ling responded, Stop yelling. Your dad is missing. Ling felt more and more irritated and tried to quiet her son, but to her surprise, Xiao Hao cheered when he heard the news. He exclaimed, That useless loser finally left. That's great, Mom. Let's have Ito uncle move in. He can be my new dad. Xiaohao started cursing Jing without restraint. His tone was so vicious that Ling shuddered in shock. She asked, "Who taught you to say those things?" "He's your real dad." She remembered that at most, father and son didn't get along, but it had never come to the point of severing their relationship. But since Minoru returned, Xiaohao's behavior had become more and more unruly, and now he was a little demon. Xiaohao rolled his eyes and said, "He doesn't deserve to be my dad. I don't want a useless dad like him." Xiaohao pouted and venomously added, "Today he even embarrassed himself at the banquet. I should have let him crash and die." "Shut up." Ling's face darkened, and she scolded Xiaohao. "He raised you for 6 years. How could you curse him like that? Tell me, is someone behind you teaching you to talk like this?" Seeing that his mother seemed genuinely angry, Xiaohao appeared scared. He stammered, "Ito uncle told me. He said my dad's a useless loser, and I'd be laughed at by my classmates if I had him as my dad." Just then, an urgent message from her assistant arrived. "Miss, we've just found out that the Sato family has gone bankrupt abroad. Minoru only came back to seize your assets, so please don't fall for it." It turned out that everything was being orchestrated by Minoru behind the scenes. Ling collapsed onto the sofa, her heart being torn apart with pain. She couldn't believe that the man she had loved for so long was actually this kind of person. To get her wealth, he was willing to do anything, even driving Jing away. Jing had suffered so much injustice. Would he ever come back? She muttered to herself, "I'll find Jing first, and then I'll deal with Minoru." Ling suddenly stood up, determined to mobilize all resources to search for him everywhere. Now that she had seen the truth, she would stop at nothing to find Jing. Chapter 4 days passed quickly. A tip-off came stating that before Jing left the restaurant, he had gone to the second floor to find Madame Ling. Ling immediately drove to her mother's mansion and rushed to ask the moment she met her, "Mom, where is Jing? Did he come to see you?" Madame Ling sighed and said, "Let him go." It seemed that Madame Ling had anticipated that someone would come looking for her, and she comforted Ling, "Anyway, you didn't have much of a real emotional connection with him. Now that Minoru is back, I've watched both of you grow up. Mom, why are you trying to match me with Minoru too?" Ling trembled slightly. After learning the truth, she grew more and more repulsed by others trying to push her toward Minoru. She said, "I used to like Minoru, but I never agreed to divorce Jing." Madame Ling looked shocked and said, "You didn't agree? Then how did you two get divorced?" "I didn't. I just—" Ling panicked again, not knowing what to say. Should she admit it was her carelessness, or had she never really cared for Jing? Compared to Jing's dedication, Ling felt an overwhelming sense of guilt. For years Jing had cared for her and their child more meticulously than her own parents, even to the point where he treated them like treasures. She was irritated. When she felt down, Jing would go out of his way to make her happy. Whenever they fought, he was always the first to back down. She had no appetite. Jing would bring her a different dessert every half hour. Ling couldn't imagine how terrible her life would have been without Jing for the past years. Minoru might have been her first love, but now he only wanted to use her. To give up Jing for him? That was absurd. Seeing that her daughter was still upset, Madame Ling took a contract from her drawer. "Fine, I'll tell you the truth. Back when Minoru left for abroad, you were miserable, so I found someone to help you through it." It turned out Jing had urgently needed money at the time, to the tune of million. He had spent years looking after her. They had hoped to marry, have children, and live a normal life. But with Minoru's sudden return, Jing had sacrificed his wealth and even his child's custody, deciding he would no longer enter the Ling family. Madame Ling continued, but Ling's ears began to ring. Her hands were trembling uncontrollably, and the contract she was holding nearly turned white from her grip. Had Jing been kind to her all these years simply as a task? Had he married and had children only because of a few pieces of paper? So Jing had never loved her, and once Minoru returned, he left without hesitation? That wasn't possible. If Jing's feelings for the family had all been fake, how could he have treated them so well? Ling wanted to deny the truth, but the reality crashed over her like a tidal wave, breaking her apart. She tore the contract in half and slammed it onto the table. Madame Ling sighed. She hadn't expected things to turn out this way. Her daughter had always been cold and composed, only losing control when Minoru left, and now she was doing it again because of a few words from him. If she didn't find Jing soon, Ling might do something drastic again. Ling looked up, her eyes burning with determination. She said, "Mom, you must tell me where Jing went." Madam Ling hesitated for a long time, but finally decided to tell her daughter Jing's whereabouts. However, when she contacted her subordinates, she learned that Jing had changed his flight and cut off all surveillance. At that moment, Ling felt a wave of desolation wash over her. It seemed Jing was determined to sever ties completely. Madam Ling quickly tried to comfort her. "Don't worry. I can confirm he's at the Vienna Music Academy. The rest you'll have to find on your own." Okay. Ling's hope reignited. She immediately arranged for a private plane to take off at noon. When she returned home to pack, she found her son had brought Minoru inside. Minoru asked, "Ling, where are you going?" Ling's voice had grown cold, tinged with impatience. "What's it to you?" Seeing the men in front of her again, she only felt disgust and hypocrisy. Minoru was taken aback, but still stepped forward to show concern. "Are you feeling unwell? Let me take you to the doctor." She pushed him aside. "Move. I'm going to find Jing." Minoru was stunned. He hadn't expected that she had been searching for Jing all these days, not coming to see him. What had Jing done to make her like this? Minoru cursed under his breath, then pretended to be in pain and collapsed to the floor. He said, "Ling, the wound from the fish tank is inflamed. It hurts so much. Help me." This time, Ling didn't even glance at him as she walked past. Xiao Hao immediately shouted, "Mom, don't you like Uncle Ito the most? Why are you still looking for that useless man?" Ling furrowed her brows. "Who's the useless one?" She glared at her son, her eyes cold with fury. She bit her lip and said, "Your own father was driven away by you, and now you call him useless? Minoru, are you behind all this, teaching my son to say such things?" Minoru broke out in a cold sweat, his voice hoarse as he said, "Ling, what are you talking about? I don't understand." Ling's anger boiled over. She ripped off the bandage, revealing a completely healed wound. "Stop pretending. You've been scheming to drive Jing away. I was going to settle this with you later, but now you've walked right into my trap. Don't blame me." Minoru had never seen Ling this hysterical, and his face turned pale with fear. He was well aware of Ling family's influence and the consequences of crossing them. He pleaded, "Ling, please let me explain. I did it because I love you. Jing is not worthy of you. We've been in love since childhood. Come back to me. I'll take care of you and Xiao Hao for the rest of my life." He desperately crawled to Ling's feet, gazing at her with affection, but Ling only threw the documents in his face. Is this your idea of a lifetime of responsibility? When you left me and went abroad. Now you're broken. Want to come back and grab my fortune?" Her eyes were freezing, filled with endless disappointment for a selfish, hypocritical man. She had lost her true love, Jing. This wasn't just disappointment in Minoru, it was disappointment in herself. Minoru quickly said, "This isn't true. Don't believe the rumors." Minoru struggled in panic, but Ling didn't give him another chance. She had him thrown into a car and sent to his creditors. The creditors had been too afraid to act due to Ling family's power, but now that they knew Minoru hadn't secured any money, they wouldn't let him go. Minoru screamed, "No. Please, Ling, I was wrong." Hearing his desperate cries, Xiao Hao stood frozen, too scared to look his mother in the eye. Ling turned to Xiao Hao and said, "I've spoiled you for too long. Now come with me. We're going to find your dad and apologize to him." Chapter 2 weeks later, in a foreign country, he had just finished a month of courses and was leisurely strolling outside the Vienna Music Academy. At that moment, Anna quietly appeared behind him. Since they were from the same hometown, they had grown particularly close recently and had become inseparable friends. "Jing, you should check the news. Apparently there's gossip about Miss Ling. It said she dumped her lover and has been running around the world with her child looking for you." He responded indifferently, "Mm. He merely acknowledged it with a sound, but inside he felt no stir of emotion. Anna asked, "After years, her mother and child ignored you, and now they're frantically looking for you? What do they think you are?" Anna was furious on his behalf, saying, "If she keeps bothering you, I'll get revenge for you." He reassured her, "Don't be upset. I'm doing just fine here." After comforting her for a bit, he turned into a small alley and said, "By the way, I still need to go back and cook for Ava, so I'll head off now." "All right, see you tomorrow." The evening in Austria was always so enchanting. The dreamy sunset bathed every corner of the skyline. Breathing in the fresh air mixed with the earthy smell of rain, he returned to his residence. It was a small house he rented off campus, where he spent his time gardening and playing the piano. Life was peaceful and pleasant. "Uncle Wong, you're back." A sweet voice came from inside, and Ava excitedly ran out. She almost tripped over the long apron she was wearing. He hurriedly caught her, saying, "You're wearing an adult-sized apron, little one." She smiled. "I made your favorite Coca-Cola chicken wings, Uncle. You work so hard every day. I don't want to be a burden to you." Looking at Ava's dirt-covered little face, his heart softened. Ava was an abandoned child he met at an orphanage. At the age of, she was adopted by a foreign couple, but after their sudden death, she was trafficked and ended up here, lost and alone. It was a strange twist of fate that when he dropped his wallet, a hungry Ava chased him for 5 blocks to return it to him. Her kindness and responsibility had led to them being reunited. She asked, "Uncle, why are you crying?" He replied, "I'm not crying." She questioned, "If you're not crying, why do your eyebrows look like that?" Ava imitated him by furrowing her brow, looking incredibly cute. He couldn't help but laugh, reaching out to pat her little head, his heart full of emotion. For years, he had been tirelessly dedicated to what he thought was a family, always smiling and serving Ling, but she had never acknowledged him. He cooked nutritious meals for Xiao Hao even when he was sick, but neither of them ever showed any concern for him, not even knowing his likes and dislikes. Yet here was a child with no blood relation, whose small actions had touched him deeply. He suddenly wished Ava were his daughter. He said, "Let's go. Ava, let's have dinner." She responded, "Okay." They held hands as they were about to enter, but suddenly he heard footsteps from behind. He turned around, his brows furrowing slightly. There they were, the 2 faces he had dreamt of escaping from. Ling and Xiao Hao were standing there, their hair messy and damp with rain, looking particularly disheveled. They had been in Austria for 2 weeks, searching for him every day. From social groups to the Chinese streets, they had asked almost everyone they could, and finally they found his address. He didn't say a word, turning around to leave. Ling rushed after him, shouting, "Jing, don't go." He asked, "What's the matter, Ling?" She said, "It's been a month already, you still won't come back?" He replied, "Sorry, I'm doing fine here. If there's nothing else, please leave." He was as cold as ice, his voice void of any emotion. Ling began to panic, saying, "Is there nothing we can talk about? Come back with me. I'll agree to anything you say. You like it here, right? We could buy this place, hire gardeners to take care of the flowers, and we can vacation here. Oh, and you want to learn music? We can bring in top musicians to teach you." And Ling, he stopped her, swallowing hard. "We're divorced. Please stop bothering me." Upon hearing this, Ava immediately hugged his leg, glaring at Ling and Xiao Hao with hostility. "Don't come back here. You're not welcome." Xiao Hao, standing nearby, suddenly felt a surge of jealousy. The nanny he used to boss around was now so close to this strange child. He shouted, "You're nothing. Let go of him. He's my dad." Xiao Hao gritted his teeth and ran over, pulling the 2 apart with all his might. After 2 weeks of searching, he was already frustrated, and now that he still refused to go back with them, he let out all his anger. Pampered since childhood, Xiao Hao directed all his fury at Ava. He screamed, "He's not yours. You're not allowed to take my dad." Ava's arm was reddened from being yanked, and she couldn't help but cry, but her little hands still clung to him. She knew that if she let go, she would have nothing left. Uncle must have suffered a lot at Ling's house. She didn't want him to endure any more pain. She cried out, "Uncle Wong, Ava will protect you. I don't have anything left now. I can't lose you." Her cry struck his heart like a dagger. For the first time in years, he was furious. With a loud slap, he struck Xiao Hao across the face. He staggered back, unable to believe it, and started crying hysterically. He cried, "You hit me, just for this little slut." Xiao Hao's foul language had only gotten worse over time. Another slap rang out. The sound echoed through the yard, leaving Ling frozen in place. He cursed, "Clean up that filthy mouth of yours." Suppressing his anger, he coldly glared at Xiao Hao. "I've loved and cared for you for 6 years, only to raise a wolf cub. If you don't learn your lesson now, you'll be beaten to death one day. I'm telling you, you're a Ling, not my son, Jing Wong." From the day you raised your hand against me, from the day you disrespected your elders, from the day you took a thief as your father, we severed all ties." Hearing these words, Xiao Hao cried even louder. Though he couldn't fully comprehend, he knew now that he truly didn't want him anymore. He no longer had a father. "Mom, Dad doesn't want me anymore." Xiao Hao ran toward Ling crying. But what awaited him was another slap. Slap! Ling scolded him. "Now you're crying?" Back then, 2 fried chicken wings from Minoru could make you turn upside down. And now you're conspiring to harm your real father. Ling grabbed him and forced him to kneel, saying, "Now apologize to your father." Chapter, "I'm sorry, Dad. I know I was wrong." Xiao Hao's eyes were so swollen from crying he could barely open them, but he kept banging his head on the ground as he repeatedly apologized. "I know you were only doing what's best for me. I shouldn't have yelled at you or hit you." His forehead was bleeding from the constant bowing, but he didn't stop. At this moment, he finally understood how much it must have hurt when he was knocked down and hit my head that day. Ling said, "Jing, it was us, your mother and I, that were wrong, taking your kindness for granted." Her eyes were red and she continued, "We've woken up to the truth. Minoru has been punished. We're ready to start over. Will you give us another chance?" The once arrogant Miss Ling, who used to look down on everyone, was now bowing her head in apology to a mere son-in-law. But he didn't hesitate for a second. "No." Ling looked at him, stunned, her voice trembling. "Did you never love me? Don't you feel anything for me at all?" He replied, "No." He shook his head calmly, with no emotion in his eyes. He said, "All the kindness I showed you was nothing but a contract. I'm just an ordinary person. What right do I have to marry into a wealthy family? What right do I have to earn the affection of a young lady? And what right do I have to compete with my beloved for a place? Love? That's something I don't deserve." His cold words felt like daggers stabbing into Ling's heart. She stared at him, her breath catching in her throat. The person who used to look at her with nothing but love and affection now couldn't even bring himself to look at her. She had never seen him like this before. She said, "Jing I," before she could say anything else. He turned away and left her with 2 final words. "I never loved you. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. The contract is over, and everything was just a farce." He grabbed Ava's hand and led her home. The little girl glanced back at the mother and son one last time. Ling and Xiao Hao couldn't say a word, their faces pale with shock and sorrow. As the door closed behind them, it felt as though they were in completely different worlds. Inside, the warmth was soothing. Ava and he sat at the table, enjoying a hot meal while they played around and laughed together. Outside, the last rays of sunlight faded and Ling and Xiao Hao were left in complete darkness, losing all their light. From that day on, every time he left the house, he would find a pile of gifts outside his door, each topped with a fresh bouquet of roses. He would just laugh quietly and toss the flowers into the trash. Ling still didn't understand. She never realized that she didn't like the kind of rose she was giving him, one with thorns. No matter how beautiful it would never be able to get close. He left the other gifts untouched until a week later when Ling came knocking at his door again. She was apologizing nonstop, but he was so tired of it that he called the police. The police said, "Sorry, ma'am. Your visa has expired. You must be forcibly deported. Moreover, because of your repeated harassment of Mr. Wong, your visa application will not be approved without his consent." Hearing this, Ling had no choice but to return to her country. Life without him became increasingly miserable for the mother and son. The new chef didn't understand their tastes and often cooked meals they didn't like. The hired nanny was too sensitive and left as soon as she was scolded or hit. Xiao Hao wrote an apology letter every day, hoping one day he could hand it directly to his father. Ling tried every possible method to contact Jing, but the withdrawal symptoms tortured her with longing. She searched through her phone's gallery but could only find a few photos together. They were old selfies she had sent to Minoru with Jing appearing in the background. Ling muttered to herself, "How could this happen? Did I really never care about him?" A wave of pain spread through her body as she realized the truth. Only after losing something did she understand its value. During the days after Jing left, Ling had simply felt the inconvenience of no one taking care of her. But now with the truth revealed, she understood she had long since fallen for him. Not only did she marry him, but she wouldn't have minded giving herself to him. It was just that Minoru had been too dazzling, making her overlook the love hidden in her heart. True love is what remains after the bubble bursts. Miss Ling, I found a clue. At that moment, her assistant called. Ling said, Tell me. The assistant replied, Mr. Wang has suggested charitable donations to an orphanage that he grew up in. Apparently, the director is very close to him, and maybe they can get in touch with him. Upon hearing this news, Ling immediately headed to the orphanage. In the director's office, several bags of expensive gifts were placed on the desk, and Ling made her intentions clear. However, the director immediately pushed the gifts back, frowning. Take it back. I won't accept anything from the Ling family. She glanced at Ling warily, knowing that the other party likely had an ulterior motive. In order not to worry Jing, the director had quietly rejected all the Ling family's charitable donations after he left, because she knew very well that everything the Ling family gave came with a price. Ling said, Director, you misunderstand. I only have one small request. She spoke sincerely. I can't get in touch with Jing right now. Could you please help me make a call? The director responded, Miss Ling, you must be joking. The director slowly said, You've been married to Jing for years and still can't contact him. How would an old woman like me have any ability to help? Hearing this, even the assistant didn't dare breathe. In his mind, no one had ever dared to speak to Ling like this in a city in the past. Ling would have gotten angry, but now instead of being angry, she bowed deeply and said, Director, I have wronged Jing in the past. Now I just want to make it up to him. Please give me a chance. Seeing her humble demeanor, the director sighed deeply. She said, Miss Ling, I'm not making things difficult for you. Years ago, Jing became your family's son-in-law and suffered so much for the sake of curing my cancer. I owe him a great debt. I have no right to make decisions for him. Please understand. Upon hearing this, Ling was struck with a jolt. So Jing had signed the contract to save the director's life? For years he had been giving everything to others without a single complaint. How kind and selfless he truly was. After bidding farewell to the director, Ling went to the orphanage dormitory. Looking at the simple environment where Jing had grown up and learning more about his past, her heart ached. Jing had been abandoned as a child and had never felt the warmth of a family. When he was with her, perhaps he had once dreamed of a harmonious life, but she and Xiao Hao had repeatedly wounded his heart, leading him to be completely disappointed. Time flew by, and before she knew it, it was early autumn. At Vienna Academy, he was about to attend his graduation ceremony. In just this short year, without the burden of trivial matters, he immersed himself in music and unleashed a terrifying talent that astounded everyone. He released songs, gaining a considerable global influence, with a golden track called Lonely City. He raked in millions. After receiving his awards, Anna walked over teasingly. Nice work. With that level, why bother continuing your studies? How are we supposed to survive? He simply smiled lightly and replied, I'm doing this out of necessity. It's not like Ms. Anna is here to gild your career. He looked at her tilted graduation cap and casually adjusted it. Anna, feeling the warmth of his hand, blushed slightly and said, So what's next for you? It was at this point that she realized she had fallen for this man before her. Not only was he handsome and talented, but he also took care of her like a brother, making her feel warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. He replied, Me? I'm probably going back to my country. Looking off towards the distant lawn, he said, Overseas, you can't process adoption papers. I want to go back and give Ava a home and also help build the welfare home. Anna nodded, Such a noble goal. I support you. Anna patted his shoulder and said, My family has some influence in a city. If the Ling family keeps bothering you, they'll have to get through me first. He replied, I really appreciate it. After their conversation, he planned to return and pack his things, but Anna, reluctant to leave, followed him home. She said, How about I go back to a city with you? We can form a group. He refused. There's no future following me. You should go back to Beijing, otherwise your father will start looking for you everywhere. He had already noticed Anna's feelings for him, and he also had a good impression of this lively and cheerful girl, but the gap between them was simply too large, both in terms of age and background. He didn't want to waste her youth, so he had to keep his distance. She said, I just want to go to a city to develop. We could keep an eye on each other. He firmly rejected her, No. Anna pouted and clung to his arm, but he still insisted that she return to Beijing. Just then, the door opened. When Ava saw the two of us, she jumped up happily, saying, "Uncle George and Anna, you're finally here." Today Ava had already packed her things and made a big spread of food. We ate together, exchanging looks. Anna blinked her big eyes mischievously while Ava gave a silent okay gesture. She said, "Uncle George, can Aunt Anna come back to a city with us?" Ava's eyes sparkled with pleading. "I really like Aunt Anna. Can she come with us?" He looked at the two of them exchanging glances and laughed helplessly. 8 hours later, the three of them were on the same flight, landing at a city's airport. He bought a villa and immediately held our first concert with Anna. They had been planning for 3 months, from lyrics to arrangements, from production to publicity, pouring their passion into the studio. He hadn't been this happy in a long time. On the day of the concert, the crowd outside was overwhelming, but before he went on stage, he accidentally saw two familiar names on the VIP. Ling Xiaohao. "Jing, do you want me to cancel their tickets?" Anna asked with some concern. He chuckled and replied, "What's there to be afraid of? To me, they're just two spectators now." Anna said, "This is our first concert. Don't mess it up." He responded, I won't." The stage lights dazzled, and as the music began, Anna and he stepped onto the stage one after the other. The audience cheered, but there was one face in the crowd that was dark as thunder. Ling watched them sing together, silently putting down the light stick she had prepared. She had also spent 3 months preparing for this concert, hoping to win him back, but Anna's appearance had thoroughly poured cold water on her hopes. Xiaohao asked nervously, "Mom, did Dad marry someone else?" "Don't talk nonsense. He would never be so heartless." Ling was consumed with jealousy, but could only suppress her feelings. It wasn't until after the show that she came backstage to find him. When they saw each other again, they were like strangers passing through a crowd. "Jing," Ling called out, "you finally returned to a city. Do you know I've waited for you for a whole year? You came back because of me, right? How about we remarry now?" He looked at her hopeful gaze and sighed deeply. "Ma'am," he said flatly, "the audience seats are not this way." Hearing his cold tone, Ling's fantasy shattered completely. She had thought if she just waited, everything would get better. She never expected that he would really abandon her. Her voice trembled. "Jing, you can't do this to me. I'm your wife of years. Xiaohao is your biological son too." But just then, a loud voice rang out. "Enough." Anna frowned and said, "Now you want to reconcile? Why didn't you do that earlier? Don't you know that once water is poured out, it's hard to gather back? Security, escort them out of the lounge. Don't disturb Jing's rest." Upon hearing this, Ling's heart completely broke. Now that he didn't want her, she was even being bullied by another woman. She had always been dominant in a city, so how could she tolerate this humiliation? Fuming with anger, she immediately began to shout, "It's definitely you who seduced Jing. Otherwise, how could he abandon me and Xiaohao? I'll teach you a lesson, you shameless woman." Ling raised her hand, but before she could strike, he quickly blocked her. He gripped her wrist tightly and forcefully shoved her down. Looking at her, he warned coldly, "Stay away from us. Just looking at you disgusts me." The security guards swarmed in, and Ling felt the world spinning. Mother and son were forced out of the venue. Leaning against a wall in a daze, they didn't leave until after the concert, and it was already dark when they walked into a restaurant, chatting and laughing. Outside the window, Ling watched them, her heart sinking as she remembered when she and Minoru were in a similar situation. Back then, Jing had looked at her the same way. A sense of bitterness rose in her chest, suffocating her. She could hardly imagine how much Jing must have hated her back then. She muttered to herself, "Jing, I'm just a horrible person. I'm sorry." Ling fell into regret and self-blame, but she still couldn't give up. Just as she was about to make a scene in the restaurant, several bodyguards arrived and surrounded mother and son. Madam Ling stepped out of the car, her brow furrowed. She said, "Ling, the company's finances are in a major crisis. Do you have time to be here looking for him?" "Mom, Madam Ling interrupted her. "Enough. Get back and handle this. Leave this to me." She forcibly took both of them back, then went alone to the restaurant and paid the bill for our table. She said, "Jing, long time no see." Madam Ling didn't waste time with pleasantries. She immediately wrote a check for $1 million and said, "You can see the situation. Ling and Xiao Hao can't be separated from you. Given your past performance, I'll give you every year. Hearing this, he suddenly laughed. He had guessed correctly. Madame Ling would always care only for her precious daughter. Even now, she still saw exploitation as a favor. Speaking with an air of superiority, she never cared about his well-being, treating him like a tool to be used and discarded at will, just like Ling. So he said, "Sorry, Auntie." He pushed the check back towards her and without a second thought, wrote a check for $1,000,000 himself. "I owe the Ling family nothing anymore. If you're not satisfied, I'll return the previous $1,000,000 to you. If it weren't for the Ling family back then, I would have made the $1,000,000 and gained control of my life much faster." At this, Madame Ling looked stunned. She couldn't hear these harsh truths that she was unwilling to admit, and she certainly didn't allow him to defy her. Her expression darkened. "What's with this attitude? I've been more than generous with you." Madame Ling's face shifted as she threatened. "If you stay in a city for even a day, don't think you can escape the grasp of the Ling family." Upon hearing this, Anna stood up, coldly sneering. "Are you threatening Jing? The Ling family really has a big hand in everything." Ah. Madame Ling was furious now, thinking of her daughter's broken heart. She wished she could drag him back immediately. Anna sensed the change in the atmosphere and instinctively stepped in front of him, exuding an energy that wasn't typical of her. But before anything else could happen, bodyguards suddenly rushed over and forcibly escorted Madame Ling out. At the Ling family villa, "Miss Ling, it's bad. Someone has provided massive evidence of tax fraud. We're facing fines worth hundreds of millions. The board is in chaos. All the shareholders are causing trouble. What should we do?" Ling sat frozen, unable to believe the magnitude of the crisis. She hadn't expected the group to get into such deep trouble and found herself frantically trying to manage the situation. But after a year of being away from the business, Ling had no idea where to start. Then a message popped up on her phone. It was from Minoru. The message, "Ling, you caused me to lose a hand, and now I'm going to take my revenge on you. Send me $1,000,000 now, or I'll expose even more of Ling Group's secrets and watch your stock price crash." Only then did Ling realize she had leaked sensitive information when she and Minoru were in close contact. She never expected him to retaliate so soon. At this moment, she regretted everything. She couldn't believe she had handed over such leverage to a petty villain like him. Compared to Jing's selflessness, Minoru didn't even measure up to a single hair of his. She felt dizzy and helpless, muttering, "I'm such a fool. Why didn't I cherish the person right in front of me?" Ling collapsed to the ground, feeling as if the world was crumbling around her. The once happy and thriving Ling family's daughter now found herself in such a pitiful state. "Useless. Get up." A furious voice rang through the villa, causing everyone to snap to attention. Martin Ling, Ling's father, stormed in, his face dark as thunder, signaling for the bodyguards to seat Madame Ling on the couch. "Dad, you're back?" Chapter Shut up. I don't have such a useless daughter. Martin Ling was trembling with anger, his voice shaking as he scolded. "I took your second and third brothers abroad to build a business, left the company to you for years, and this is how you manage it? As the eldest daughter of the Ling family, you're obsessed with a man, thinking about nothing but him. What kind of behavior is that? Someone bring the family law." Several bodyguards took out a winding wooden cane and surrounded Ling Yu. "Throwing your life away for an unfaithful man, with no self-respect, violating the Ling family's ancestral teachings." Whack! The cane struck and Ling's clothes instantly ripped, causing her to fall to the ground. He continued to berate her. "Years of marriage, infidelity, forcing out my best son-in-law, bringing disgrace to the Ling family. Shameless." Another strike and Ling pressed her hands on the ground, feeling the fiery pain in her back, her face streaked with tears. "Mom!" Xiao Hao shouted, rushing over, glaring at Martin. "Don't you dare hit my mom." Martin gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, fine." Looking at his disappointing children, Martin in his rage nearly fainted on the spot. He pointed at Xiao Hao and said, "Then let this one get a taste of the whip." David, showing no respect, no upbringing, a disgrace to our entire family. Martin personally struck Xiao Hao, who screamed and cried out in pain. Madame Ling, feeling heartbroken, rushed forward to stop him, saying, "Enough. Stop hitting them." But Martin slapped her across the face. "You shameless woman. Ling wants to die, and you let her? Look at what this family has become under your pampering. Madame Ling, tears streaming down her face, said, I did it for her sake. Martin scowled. For her sake? Does that give you the right to destroy other people's lives? Have you been in charge for so long that you think you control everything? Martin scoffed. Today you almost offended the Su family of a city. If I hadn't come in time, the Ling family would be finished, thanks to you. The three of them were completely humiliated, their eyes swollen from crying. Ling was in pain, both physically and emotionally. Hearing her father's words, she slapped herself twice in frustration. Master, the situation has been handled and the culprit has been caught. At this moment, one of Martin's subordinates entered, dragging in a disheveled Minoru. His face was pale, filled with fear as he pleaded, Ling Master, please, I beg you, let me go. Martin asked, Is this all because of you? You miserable cur, causing trouble. Martin's voice turned cold, his eyes dark and piercing as he said, You dare to cause trouble after losing a hand? I'll make sure you're completely quiet from now on. The autumn rains continued relentlessly. The first thing he did after receiving the earnings was to brave the rain and head to the orphanage. The director saw them arrive, and her worried expression turned into joy. Jing, Ava, you're here. I've been waiting for you since last year. I'm so glad to finally see you. He said, Grandma, I've been busy with the concert, so I haven't had a chance to visit you. He took Ava's hand and said, I plan to donate another $1 million to the orphanage this time. This is all money I earned personally. I also want to ask you about the adoption process. The director was a bit surprised. And what do you want to adopt? Ava. Yes. I don't want to see her drifting around anymore. The director nodded. Adoption would be good. She gently stroked Ava's sweet face and sighed. But unfortunately, since you're an adult male, you can't adopt her alone. To meet the criteria, you must be married in order to adopt a child. Chapter Marry a Wife. Where am I supposed to find one? He stared blankly at Ava, but before he could think further, a voice came from behind. Marry me then. Anna cheerfully stepped forward. He quickly responded, Don't joke around. This can't be. Despite his frantic rejection, the director immediately saw through his thoughts. Anna had heard the rumors a long time ago. Though she was from a good family, she had no airs about her and had even helped him a lot. Such a wonderful girl, she'd be perfect for Jing. The director smiled and teased. All right, you two get closer. Let me see if you make a good match. Anna pulled him closer, our faces almost touching. She asked, Grandma, what do you think? The director replied, Very good. You two really do look like a couple. Ava also thinks you two look like a married couple. Hearing Ava's innocent and serious voice, they all burst out laughing. Still feeling a bit shy, he said, Grandma, maybe we'll talk about this later. Anna pinched his arm, complaining. Jing, do you not like me? Anna said, puffing out her cheeks. I'm not worse looking than Ling, and you managed to put up with her for years. That's right, the director added. You can't be that bad at enjoying life, can you? A girl like her is hard to find even if you searched with a lantern. And with a sensible child like Ava, if you don't adopt her soon, someone else will. After hearing this, he no longer had any doubts. He felt as if a little sprout had pierced through the soil, blooming with vitality. It was his heart that had long since died, but now it was starting to come back to life. Since Anna trusted him so much, he shouldn't keep avoiding it. The only way to truly accept this love was to become a better version of himself. 2 days later, Anna and he finalized the paperwork and went home to cook a hot pot. They sat around the table as a family of 3, and the atmosphere was incredibly warm. Ava looked at them eagerly and said, Mom and Dad, when the new year is over, could you pick a date to get married? He smiled and said, You sure do speak fast with that little mouth of yours. Anna, hearing herself called Mom for the first time, blushed. Just then there was a knock at the door. He opened it and found Ling and Xiaohao standing there. Jing, don't close the door. We're not here to disturb you. Ling's face was pale and exhausted, her voice hoarse as she said, I have no home left. I've been completely kicked out of a city. We may never see each other again. He replied, Is there anything else you need to say? She said, Also, I wish you both eternal happiness. Ling looked at the warm family before her, and her heart was filled with mixed emotions. This was once supposed to be hers, but now it was too late. Xiaohao said, Daddy, can I have one last hug? Xiao Hao timidly spoke. I promise I'll be a good boy from now on. Always listen to you. He hesitated for a moment, but in the end he still embraced him. After all, he was his own flesh and blood. How could he let his son live with regret? Instantly, both mother and son were in tears. Despite the overwhelming sadness in her heart, Ling held herself back from disturbing the atmosphere of the new family and with great effort pulled Xiao Hao away. She said, We won't disturb you any longer. Goodbye. He said, All right. I wish you both happiness in the rest of your lives. He watched as the two of them disappeared into the light rain, and he finally felt a sense of peace. Everything has to come to an end. They had received the punishment they deserved, and he had gained a brand new life. Years of memories. He hoped they will slowly fade with the passage of time.